Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table of life? That was the thought that sometimes flickered through Maria Santos's mind as she pushed her cart through the long, sterile hallways of St. Mary's General Hospital. The rain outside wasn't just rain that night. It was a storm that rattled the windows like a restless hand tapping to be let in. Thunder rolled over downtown Seattle, echoing across the tall glass facade of the 12-story medical center. But inside, everything seemed ordinary. Too ordinary. Doctors buried in charts. Nurses moving briskly from room to room, carrying trays, adjusting floor lines, answering buzzers. The night shift settled into its rhythm, and Maria, with her mop and bucket, walked the same hall she had walked for 5 years. Soft-soled shoes, the faint scent of disinfectant, the squeak of the cart's loose wheel. Nobody really saw her dot, too. Most of them, she was the cleaning lady. Polite, quiet, reliable, a background figure in the story of the hospital's nights. Some nodded when they passed her. Others didn't even notice. Maria never minded. She wore invisibility like a cloak, but sometimes on nights like this, when rain hammered the windows and the building seemed to breathe with its own tension, she wondered if they would ever know. Would they ever know who she had once been? Would they ever believe it? Dr. Jennifer Walsh, head of the cardiac unit, hurried past, exhausted, eyes rimmed with fatigue. She gave Maria a quick nod, barely pausing. Working late again, Maria? Maria's smile was polite. Third shift, doctor. You know how it is. The doctor didn't hear the slight catch in her voice. Nobody ever did dot at the nurses' station. Patricia Chun whispered to a new resident. Maria's been here longer than half the staff. Never misses a day. Never complains. Model employee. Model employee. Model ghost. Maria turned away, pushing her cart toward the 7th floor corridor. Each hallway she scrubbed, each trash bin she emptied, each light bulb she replaced. It was all part of the same camouflage. The camouflage of an ordinary life, because beneath the mop bucket, beneath the humble smile and accented English, lived someone else entirely. Someone who had walked in deserts and mountains. Someone who had carried heavier weapons than a mob. Someone who once answered to the call sign Phantasm, Petty Officer First Class Maria Elena Santos, United States Navy, SEAL Team 6.8 years. Of operations across continents, the people here only read about in newspapers. But that life was gone now. Or at least, that's what she told herself every time she tightened the drawstrings of her custodial apron. She had traded rifles for rags, missions for mop water, night vision for fluorescent light. She had chosen obscurity, and she had chosen it for reasons no one here would ever know. And still, sometimes the silence pressed too heavy. Sometimes the memories returned with the smell of antiseptic or the echo of boots in an empty hallway. Sometimes the ghost inside her stirred. But tonight, she told herself, was just another shift. Another round of cleaning floors that would be dirty again tomorrow. Another night where nobody would see her, nobody would ask, and nobody would know until at 11:47 p.m. It happened. Maria had just finished polishing the floors of the pediatric wing on the 8th floor. The children were asleep, their monitors beeping steadily, the nurses speaking in whispers. She leaned her mop against the wall, stretching her shoulders, and then 3 sounds. So small, so faint, but she froze. The metallic click of a safety being disengaged. The soft thud of tactical boots against concrete stairwell steps. The almost imperceptible whisper of a radio transmission. Most civilians would never have noticed, but Maria noticed. Every nerve in her body lit up. It was like waking up a part of her she thought had been buried forever. She abandoned her mop. Her hand went automatically to her side, where a weapon used to hang. Nothing there now but fabric. She moved silently to the stairwell door and pressed her ear against the cold metal. Through the small wired glass window, she saw them. 3 men, black tactical gear, assault rifles, moving with precision. Not random thugs, not addicts desperate for pills. Trained operators. Her pulse quickened, but her breathing stayed calm. The shift in her mind was automatic, almost frightening. 5 years of cleaning had melted away. She was back in the field. She was hunting again. 2 carried out RUR-15 variants. One held what looked like an AK-47. Their spacing, their hand signals, their communication, it was textbook, professional, and lethal. Maria's lips pressed into a thin line. Whoever they were, whatever they wanted, it was nothing good and right. Now, they were inside a hospital filled with patients, including children. She slipped back from the door, pulling her phone from her pocket. Dialed 3 numbers she hadn't dialed in years. Seattle Police Emergency. This is Maria Santos, St. Mary's General Hospital. We have 3 armed men in tactical gear entering the building. 7th floor, moving up. You need to send units now. Ma'am, how do you know they're terrorists? Because I used to hunt people like them. The words almost slipped out before she stopped herself. Then, quieter, to herself, she said it anyway. Because I used to hunt people like them for a living. Louder, to the dispatcher. Just send everything you have, now. But before the operator could respond, the stairwell door burst open. Maria ended the call. The sound of boots spilled into the hallway. Her body moved before her mind could catch up, years of instinct taking over. Silent, precise, invisible. She melted into a shadowed alcove, breath steady, muscles coiled. The leader of the group spoke, with an accent, thick and sharp. Eastern European. Russian, maybe. Remember, the research is on floor 10. Dr. Harrison's formulas. 50 million on the black market. Anyone in our way dies. Maria's blood ran cold. The cancer research. LAB Dr. James Harrison's work was revolutionary. She had heard doctors speak of it in hushed tones, an experimental therapy that could change everything. Priceless science, priceless lives. And yet, she thought not of the formulas, but of the 12 patients in that ward. 6 of them children. She clenched her jaw. This wasn't supposed to be her life anymore. She was just the cleaning lady. But the cleaning lady was gone. She ducked into a supply closet as the terrorists began to herd staff toward the lobby. Nurses, doctors, even the security guards. Shouts echoed down the hall. The muzzle of a rifle shoved a nurse forward. Maria counted quickly 40 hostages. At least, her chest tightened as she saw familiar faces. Dr. Walsh, Patricia Chun, others. She knew by name. Their eyes were wide, hands trembling, pressed behind their heads. The second terrorist barked orders, scarred face grim. This is not a robbery. We are here for specific materials. Cooperate and you live. Resist, you die. The third blonde, wiry, efficient, knelt by support columns, planting charges. Explosives. Maria's throat tightened. If the police stormed the building, the terrorists would bring the entire hospital down. Patients, staff, everyone. Her mind ran through the math. 3 hostels, 50 hostages, dozens of patients in beds across 12 floors. Response time? At least 20 minutes, maybe more. She could hear her old instructors in her head. Assess, decide, act. And she did. Maria slipped into the service corridors, the passages nobody but custodians and engineers used. She had spent 5 years learning every twist and corner. Tonight, they would save lives. The security office. 3rd floor. Emergency weapons locker. Her pace was steady, controlled. She was no longer Maria the cleaning lady. She was Phantasm again. Her breathing slowed. Her movements became fluid. The old calm settled in, chilling and sharp dot when she reached the office. It was empty. Guards captured, maybe worse. She punched in the emergency override code she had memorized months earlier, watching through lowered lashes when the head of security opened it. She had never thought she'd use it. Until now. The locker opened with a metallic click. A Remington 870 shotgun, a Glock 22, 60 rounds. She checked both. Fingers moved with muscle memory, as though 5 years hadn't passed. Shotgun loaded. Glock full mag, round-chambered dot. Her reflection in the dark screen of the security monitor caught her. Off guard. The mop-handled janitor was gone. The woman staring back had hard eyes again. Maria exhaled slowly. She wasn't proud of it. She wasn't eager. But she was ready. She turned toward the service tunnels again. The plan was already forming. And somewhere, deep inside, a voice whispered. Little did they know who they were really dealing with. What did it feel like to become a ghost again after 5 years of silence? Maria wondered that as she slipped through the dim service corridors, weapons pressed tight against her body. The hospital above was alive with muffled cries and shouts. The terrorists were moving quickly, corralling people, planting explosives, barking threats. But here, in the arteries of the building, it was quiet. Too quiet. Maria moved like she once had on raids in far-off deserts, smooth, invisible, every footstep calculated. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to bury. She hated how natural it felt. She hated how alive it made her feel. For 5 years, she had folded herself into the skin of a cleaner. A woman invisible, harmless, unnoticed. A woman who scrubbed floors so that others could walk them without a second thought. A woman who exchanged adrenaline for anonymity. But now the adrenaline was back, surging in her veins, sharpening her senses. It frightened her, because she knew what it meant. It meant that no matter how far she ran from her past, it was always waiting like a weapon left under glass, just waiting to be touched again. She whispered into the emergency radio she had, taken from the security station, voice low. This is Maria Santos, custodial staff. I need to speak to the incident commander. Static, then a gruff voice. This is Captain Rodriguez, Seattle PD. Ma'am, you need to evacuate immediately. Maria's lips curved bitterly. Evacuate. If only it were that simple. Negative, Captain, she said. 3 armed hostiles holding at least 50 hostages. In the lobby. They're here for Dr. Harrison's cancer research. They've planted explosives. If you storm the building, they'll bring it down. The line was silent for a moment. Mom, how do you know all this? Maria hesitated. To tell the truth was to reveal everything she had worked so hard to bury. To admit she wasn't. Just the woman with the mop dot. Her thumb hovered over the transmit button. Then, softly but firmly, she pressed it. Because I used to do what they're doing. For the other side. Another silence. Then, say again? Petty officer first. Class Maria Elena Santos. United States Navy. SEAL Team 6. 8 years. 3 combat deployments. Call sign Phantasm. I can give you my service number, but we don't have time. Do you want my help or not? The channel went dead for several heartbeats. Finally, Captain. Rodriguez's voice came back, steadier now, lined with something new respect. What do you need? Maria's throat tightened. She had sworn never to be this person again. But tonight she didn't have a choice. Eyes on the hostages, she said. Snipers outside. I'll move through the service tunnels. Take them one at a time. Quiet. Clean. When I engage, you'll know. Understood. The captain said. Maria switched off the radio and leaned against the cool wall of the corridor. For a moment, she closed her eyes. She could hear the echoes of old missions in her head. Voices of men she had fought beside. Some living, some long gone. You're good, Santos. But you're not invincible. Trust your instincts. They'll keep you alive. Don't let the job consume who you are. She opened her eyes again. Her reflection in the glass of a dark window stared back. Was she still that woman? Or just a ghost of her? She pushed off the wall. No time for doubt. Doubt got people killed. Her first target was the blonde woman with the explosives. Maria knew. The service access behind the information desk. 3 feet of crawl space, and then a panel that opened directly behind where the terrorist had been setting charges. She moved swiftly, her breath slow, counting each step. She emerged like a shadow, knife in hand. 1 second, the woman was adjusting a charge. The next, she slumped forward, Maria's blade pressed with surgical precision. Silent, final, target 1 down. Maria whispered into the radio. Explosive secured. Her hand lingered on the knife handle for a moment too long. She hated how steady it felt. She hated how calm she was. But she had no time to think about that now. The leader's voice rang across the lobby. Aina, report. Number. Answer. Maria was already gone, moving through the shadows toward her next position. The scarred man was covering the elevator banks, weapon raised. He scanned the area, nerves beginning to fray. His partner hadn't answered. He shifted, tension in every line of his body. Maria slid behind an access panel, breath even, body ready. She waited for the precise moment when he passed. She moved, arms coiling around his neck, a blood choke. Textbook, 8 seconds. He slumped silently into unconsciousness. She lowered him gently, securing his weapon. Target 2 down. Alive. Neutralized. Her voice was steady. Too steady. She knew what came next. And it was the part she dreaded. The leader. Alone now. Cornered. Dangerous. And desperate men were the hardest to predict. Her heart was steady, but deep inside, something cracked. She remembered faces. Faces from years ago. Enemies who had begged, who had raged, who had broken when the walls closed in. And she remembered one of her own. A teammate, caught in an ambush. Last words carried on a broken radio. She shook her head. Not now. Focused from her cover. She saw him grab Dr. Walsh, press the barrel of his rifle against her head. His voice thundered across the lobby. I know. You're out there. Show yourself, or she dies. Maria's stomach twisted. She had spent 5 years trying to avoid exactly this moment. The moment where she had to step into the open again, weapon in hand, with lives hanging in the balance. And yet, here she was. She keyed the radio. Captain, I need your sniper on. The main window. He moves, you take the shot. I'll distract him. Negative. Too risky. Trust me. She breathed deeply. Her body was calm, but inside, old doubts whispered. She was no longer the soldier she once was. She was older now. Out of practice. A custodian who pushed a mop more than she pulled a trigger. But if she didn't step out now, Dr. Walsh would die. The nurses would die. The children upstairs might die. Maria stepped out from cover. The shotgun hung casually at her side. Her back was straight. Her voice steady, calm, stripped of the accent she had worn like a disguise. You can let her go now, Maria said. The terrorist froze, confusion flashing across his face. You're the cleaning lady. Where did you get that weapon? Maria kept walking, each step measured. I'm a lot of things, she said softly. But right now, I'm the person standing between you and 50 innocent people. And that's a position I'm very comfortable with. His grip on Dr. Walsh tightened. Stay back. I'll kill her. Maria's eyes never left his. She read the small shifts in his stance. The twitch of his finger. The angle of his shoulders. Stress indicators she had memorized years ago. He was unraveling. You know what I've learned in 5 years of cleaning these floors? Maria said, her voice carrying across the stunned silence of the lobby. That the most important work in the world isn't done by people like you and me. It's done by people like her. She nodded to Dr. Walsh, who saves lives every single day. She gestured to the nurses huddled nearby. People who comfort families in their darkest hours. People who build instead of destroy. The man's face twisted in rage, uncertainty warring with desperation. Maria stepped closer. 15 feet now. Perfect range. And here's the thing about people like me, she whispered, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. We're very, very good at protecting them. Her muscles coiled. Her breath stilled. One heartbeat. 2 in a single motion. She dropped to one knee, shotgun rising. The man swung his rifle toward her. Too slow. The blast echoed like thunder through the lobby. The terrorist flew backward, weapon clattering across the floor. Dr. Walsh collapsed to her knees, alive. Trembling, but alive. Maria lowered the shotgun, smoke curling from the barrel. She exhaled once, the calm of finality settling in. This is Maria Santos, she said into the radio. All threats neutralized. Hostages secure. Send the medics. SWAT poured into the lobby seconds later. Officers flooded the space, weapons raised, shouting commands. But Maria simply set her shotgun down, raised her hands, and for the first time, people truly saw her. Not Maria the cleaning lady, not a ghost, but the woman she had always been, whether she wanted to be or not. Why was everyone staring at her as if they had never seen her before? Maria stood in the middle of the hospital lobby, her hands raised above her head, the shotgun lying at her feet. The air was thick with smoke, sweat, and silence. Dozens of eyes fixed on her, wide, unblinking, disbelieving. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, people she had passed by 100 times without more than a nod. For 5 years, she had been invisible to them, a shadow with a mop, the hum of wheels on tile. But now every single one of them was staring at her as if they were seeing her for the first time. She felt their gaze like a weight pressing into her skin. And for the first time in years, Maria wasn't sure she liked being visible. The terrorist leader lay sprawled across the polished floor, his weapon several feet away, blood seeping from his shoulder. Not dead. Maria had aimed carefully, but finished. The blonde woman was already gone, her body slumped behind the information desk where Maria had struck. The scarred man still lay unconscious, handcuffed by SWAT now. The immediate danger was over, but Maria's heart hadn't slowed yet. Her breathing was steady, controlled, trained, but inside, something stormed. SWAT officers spread across the lobby, shouting, clearing rooms, securing entrances. Radios crackled, commands barked, boots thundered. In the chaos, Captain Rodriguez strode toward her, helmet under one arm, his heavy vest glinting under fluorescent lights. Petty Officer Santos? His tone carried both disbelief and respect. Maria lowered her hands. Her voice was even, though inside she felt hollow. Just Maria is fine, Captain. Rodriguez's eyes studied her, the mop bucket janitor who had just dismantled a terrorist cell. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He extended his hand. Hell of a job. Maria hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm, professional, acknowledging her not as a civilian but as one of his own. She let go quickly. Behind him, Dr. Jennifer Walsh staggered to her feet, hair disheveled, face pale. She approached slowly, eyes locked on Maria. You saved us." Her voice trembled. "Who are you really?" Maria looked at her, then at the gathered faces. Patricia Chun clutching the shoulders of two nurses, an orderly pressing a cloth to his forehead, patients in wheelchairs staring in awe. People she had worked beside for years. People who had barely noticed her existence. She swallowed. Her throat felt tight, the words catching before she could form them. "I'm the same person I was this morning," she said softly. "I just had a different job before this one." The silence stretched. No one seemed to know what to say. Then, slowly, people began to clap. 1, 2. A hesitant ripple that grew into an eruption of applause. Some cried. Some whispered prayers. Others simply stared in disbelief at the quiet woman with the mop who had become their savior. But Maria didn't feel like a savior. She felt exposed. She turned away from their eyes, retrieving her mop cart from where she had left it against the wall. Her fingers gripped the handle harder than necessary. The applause still rang in her ears, but it didn't feel like gratitude. It felt like a spotlight she had spent years avoiding, because she knew what came next. The media. The questions. The past she had buried, clawing its way back into the light, and she wasn't ready for that. She never would be. As the last hostages were escorted out, Rodriguez caught her arm gently. "Maria, we'll need your statement." She nodded numbly. Of course. But her mind was already somewhere else. Somewhere darker. She remembered another night, far from Seattle, in a village where the air had smelled of sand and smoke. She remembered standing over another body, weapons still hot in her hands, while her team clapped her on the shoulder. She had felt the same then, not triumph, not pride. Just emptiness. And that emptiness had followed her home. Now it was back. "You saved them," a voice whispered inside her, but at what cost to yourself? The hospital slowly settled into a strange rhythm. Medics rushed in, checking the hostages. Patients stirred in their beds upstairs, unaware of the full horror that had unfolded beneath them. Administrators whispered in corners, already thinking about damage control and headlines. Maria sat on a hard plastic chair in the lobby, a blanket draped over her shoulders by a paramedic who hadn't known what else to do. She stared at the floor tiles, at the faint streak of blood across the grout line, at the mop leaning silently against the wall. 5 years. 5 years of cleaning, of invisibility, of burying the soldier she once was. And in one night, it had all unraveled. She felt broken. Not because she had acted. She would always act to protect innocent lives. That part of her hadn't changed. But because acting meant exposing the truth. It meant no more hiding. No more pretending she was someone else. She heard Dr. Walsh's voice nearby. "She's been working here the whole time?" 5 years, and none of us knew? Patricia Chun answered quietly. She never said a word. She was just Maria. Maria closed her eyes. Just Maria. That was all she had ever wanted to be. Hours later, the story had already spread. Reporters crowded the hospital's entrance, their cameras flashing like artillery fire. Words like hero, ex-Navy SEAL, terrorist attack foil blasted. Across screens, Maria stayed inside, refusing interviews, keeping her eyes down as she gave her statement to detectives. Captain Rodriguez shielded her as much as he could, but he couldn't stop the tidal wave of attention. "Why didn't you tell us?" One detective asked. Maria's voice was quiet. "Because I wasn't her anymore." But saying it out loud didn't make it true. When she finally walked back through the hospital halls, a cleaning cart creaking in front of her, everything felt different. Nurses who had never noticed her smiled with tears in their eyes. Doctors nodded with respect. Even patients' families stopped to thank her, pressing her hands, whispering blessings, and Maria smiled politely, accepted their gratitude, then moved on. Because she didn't know how to explain that she didn't want to be anyone's hero. She wanted to be invisible again. But invisibility was gone now. That night, when she finally stepped outside into the rain-soaked air, she tilted her face upward. Water streamed across her skin, mingling with the salt of tears she hadn't realized were there. She remembered the quiet moments on deployment, staring at the stars after a mission, wondering if she'd ever come home. She had come home. She had survived. But the war had followed her here, bleeding into a hospital lobby in Seattle, and she wondered if it would ever really leave her, because being seen meant being remembered, and being remembered meant she could never truly walk away. Inside her chest, pride and grief warred silently. Pride that she had saved lives. Grief that she had lost the peace she had spent so long trying to build. She whispered into the rain, as if speaking to herself or to ghosts only she could hear. I was just the cleaning lady. That was enough. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. True. Not anymore. Because sometimes, no matter how hard you try to disappear, the world finds you again. And when it does, you have to choose whether to stand in the light or retreat into the shadows. Maria didn't know which choice she would make tomorrow, but tonight she stood between both. How do you explain to the world that you chose silence over glory? That was the question Maria faced less than 12 hours after the attack. The sun had risen over Seattle, its pale light washing across a hospital that still smelled faintly of smoke and antiseptic. Police tape fluttered near the entrance. SWAT vehicles still blocked the street. But beyond that, a sea of cameras. Reporters jostling for position, their lenses aimed like weapons, their voices clamoring for sound bites. Former Navy SEAL janitor saves dozens of lives. Hospital hero foils terror plot. From mop to marksman, who is Maria Santos? Each headline cut deeper than the last stop. Maria had refused all interviews. She kept to the hallways, helping mop up the mess left behind by chaos, shattered glass, spilled coffee, muddy boot prints. She didn't need to do it. Custodial crews had been brought in, but the cart felt like an anchor, something to hold on to while the world outside spun too fast. Doctors and nurses stopped her now, not to pass by with polite nods, but to thank her, to shake her hand, to hug her with tears in their eyes. She accepted each with a quiet smile, but inside she felt a weight pressing her chest. Gratitude wasn't a burden, but recognition was. And recognition was the one thing she had spent years running from. By midday, she was summoned to the administrator's office. Charles Morrison, a tall man with silver hair and tired eyes, sat behind a desk stacked with papers and news clippings. He gestured for her to sit. Maria remained standing. Mr. Morrison, she said evenly. He studied her with an expression that was equal parts awe and bewilderment. Maria, I don't even know where to start. The city owes you a debt. This hospital owes you a debt. Maria shook her head. I did what needed to be done. That's all. He leaned forward. That's not all. You saved dozens of lives, maybe more. And the truth is out now. We've confirmed your service record. Petty Officer First Class SEAL Team 6, decorated. 8 years of combat. You could have done anything after leaving the Navy. So tell me, why here? Why a mop and a cart when you had the kind of experience that companies, governments, anyone would have fought to hire? Maria's gaze drifted to the window. Rain streaked the glass. Her reflection looked back at her. Tired eyes, hair pulled back, uniform simple. For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she spoke softly. Do you know what I've seen in this building over the last 5 years? Morrison said nothing. I've seen Dr. Williams work 18 hours straight to save a child's life. I've seen Nurse Rodriguez comfort a family when their father didn't make it through surgery. I've seen custodians, men like Tommy Chun, work overtime just to make sure a patient's room was spotless before they came back from chemo. She paused. Her throat tightened. In the military, I was trained to take lives, efficiently, precisely, when necessary. Here, I get to be part of something that saves them. Even if my part is just clean floors, fresh sheets, empty trash cans. It matters. It all matters. Morrison exhaled slowly. And now, after what happened last night, Maria's eyes dropped to her hands. Hands that had once held rifles. Hands that had once built a wall between life and death for people she never knew. Now, she said quietly, I'd like to get back to work, if that's all right. The pediatric wing still needs to be cleaned before the kids come back. Morrison studied her for a long time, then nodded. Of course. But Maria, just know that none of us will ever look at you the same way again. Maria forced a small smile. That's what I'm afraid of. By evening, the hospital had returned to a fragile rhythm. Patients were back in their rooms. Families whispered in waiting areas. Nurses moved quietly, though they glanced more, often toward Maria when she passed. She could feel their eyes following her now, not dismissive, not invisible seen, and it unsettled her. She wanted to fade again, to push her cart through empty halls, unremarkable, unnoticed. But every smile, every whispered "that's her" reminded her that invisibility was gone. As she mopped a hallway near the cardiac unit, Dr. Walsh approached. Her face was pale but steadier now. Maria, she began, her voice softer than usual. I wanted to thank you again, but I also wanted to ask you something. Maria wrung out the mop, setting it back against the floor. Of course, Doctor. That night, when you faced him in the lobby, you told the terrorists that the most important work is done by people who build instead of destroy. Did you mean that? Maria leaned on the handle, eyes drifting to the ceiling as if the answer were written there. In my old job, she said slowly, I was very good at breaking things, at eliminating threats, at ending what needed to be ended. But last week, I watched you save Mr. Patterson's life when everyone thought he was gone. I watched you hold his wife's hand and tell her not to give up. That takes courage I'll never have. That builds something that lasts. She resumed mopping. The rhythm of water and cloth against tile soothed her. Anyone can tear something down in a few seconds, she continued. It takes real strength to build something up day after day, year after year. That's what happens here. That's what you do. Dr. Walsh swallowed, her eyes glassy. She nodded once, then walked away silently. Maria watched her go. Inside, something ached. Not pain exactly. Something gentler. Something closer to hope. But outside the hospital walls, the world roared louder. News vans still crowded the street. Anchors spoke her name as though she were a character from a movie. From SEAL to janitor to hero. Pundits debated her choices, her motives. Some called her an inspiration. Others questioned her sanity. Maria ignored them. She left the hospital through a side exit, her hood pulled up against the rain. But even there, a reporter spotted her. Cameras flashed. A microphone thrust forward. Maria, why did you leave the SEALs? Why take a janitorial job? Do you regret it now? She turned away, pushing through the wet night air, her footsteps splashing in puddles. She didn't answer. She wouldn't give them what they wanted. A headline, a soundbite, a story they could twist on, because the truth wasn't for them. The truth was for her alone. That night, back in her small apartment, Maria sat by the window with the lights off, listening to the rain. Her weapons were gone, turned over to police as evidence. Her mop leaned against the wall. 2 lives. 2 halves of herself. She traced her finger across the condensation on the glass. Shapes formed and disappeared. She whispered into the darkness. Not to anyone in particular, but to the silence itself. I'm tired of being a soldier. The words hung in the air. Heavy. True. But she knew, deep down, that being a soldier wasn't something you could walk away from. Not completely. It lived in her bones, in her instincts, in the way she moved through the world. She could trade uniforms, trade weapons for mops, trade missions for shifts. But the ghost never really left, and she feared what that meant. Because if the world saw her as a hero again, Would they ever let her go back to being invisible? In the days that followed, the hospital adapted. Security tightened. Protocols changed. Maria found herself consulted on evacuation drills, on defensive measures. Her experience was suddenly a resource. The invisible janitor had become the silent advisor, and yet at night she still pushed her cart, still scrubbed the floors, still emptied the bins. Some staff whispered that it was strange, that a woman who had saved them all still insisted on cleaning toilets. But Maria didn't mind, because to her, there was dignity in it. Quiet dignity. And if the world couldn't understand that, then maybe they never would. But she understood, and that was enough. For now. Why did it feel lonelier to be noticed than to be invisible? Maria asked herself that question often in the weeks after the attack. At first, she thought the hardest part would be the reporters. They had swarmed the hospital for days, then weeks, camped outside in rain and cold, hungry for every scrap of her story. But she avoided them easily enough. She used service entrances, vanished into night shifts, let the world scream about her, without ever adding her voice. No. The harder part was inside the hospital walls. The faces she passed daily were different now. Nurses who once brushed by her without a glance now stopped to greet her by name. Doctors who had only offered distracted nods now thanked her, sometimes twice in one shift. Patients' families smiled, whispered blessings, pressed her hand as she walked by. Maria answered each kindness with a polite smile, a quiet thank you. But inside, she recoiled. She didn't know what to do with their recognition. For 5 years, invisibility had been her refuge. Now she carried the weight of being seen everywhere she went. And yet, something else stirred beneath the discomfort. Pride. It wasn't the chest-beating kind. Not the adrenaline-fueled surge of surviving missions overseas. It was quieter, softer. When Patricia Chun asked her to walk the halls with her on a particularly tense night. When a young nurse nervously asked if Maria could show her how to disarm someone if they ever faced danger again. When security officers began inviting her to join their drills, asking her advice as if she had never been gone from the profession. It was in those moments Maria felt the faintest flicker of belonging. Not as a soldier, not as a janitor, but something in between. It started small. One night, 2 nurses stayed late after their shift ended. Maria found them in the staff lounge, dragging chairs aside awkwardly. We didn't know who else to ask. One of them said, "Could you maybe show us a few techniques, just in case something like that ever happens again?" Maria hesitated. She didn't want to awaken the soldier she had buried. But then she saw the fear in their eyes, fear that hadn't left them since that night in the lobby. So she agreed. She cleared a space, showed them how to break free from a wrist grab, how to keep their weight centered, how to use a pen or a set of keys as a weapon if they had no choice. She kept it simple, practical, nothing fancy. By the end, both nurses looked steadier, stronger. "Thank you," one whispered, hugging her tightly. Maria nodded. But when they left, she sat alone. For a long time, her hand shook slightly. It had been years since she had taught anyone. The skills had flowed too easily, like muscle memory she couldn't forget. And part of her worried what that meant. Soon, more staff began to ask. Orderlies, receptionists, even doctors. Maria never advertised it, but word spread quietly. If you wanted to feel safer, if you wanted to learn how to defend yourself, you could ask Maria. What began with 2 nurses grew into small gatherings after shifts. A circle of tired but determined faces in the cafeteria or the gym, learning how to move, how to react, how to stay calm under pressure. Maria kept the sessions focused on defense, not aggression. She told them again and again, the goal isn't to fight. It's to survive. It's to protect yourself long enough for help to come. She saw the difference in their eyes. Fear didn't vanish, but it softened into resolve. And each time, Maria walked away torn in two, because for the first time in years, she felt useful in a way that touched something deeper than mopping floors. But every lesson brought her closer to the edge of the world she had left, a world where violence was currency and vigilance never ended. She didn't want to return there. But maybe she had never really left. One evening, Charles Morrison called her back to his office. "I want to thank you again for what you've been doing," he said. "The staff feels safer. Security feels sharper. But Maria, I have to ask, are you all right with this? Because I get the sense you're carrying something heavy." Maria studied him for a long moment. Then she asked quietly, "Do you know what it feels like to live as two people?" He shook his head. "It feels like you're never fully either." "One," she said. "When I clean these floors, I pretend I've never touched a rifle. When I teach your staff how to defend themselves, I feel the soldier creeping back in. I don't know which life is mine anymore, and I don't know which one I want." Morrison's expression softened. "Maybe it's not about choosing one or the other. Maybe it's about being both." Maria's eyes dropped to the floor. "Being both cost me too much once. I'm not sure I can survive it again." That night, as she mopped the pediatric wing, she paused by the window. The city lights shimmered across wet pavement. She saw her reflection in the glass, mop in hand, uniform plain, but eyes that carried too many shadows. Behind her, a child's voice called softly, "Miss Maria?" She turned. A boy, thin from treatment, sat up in his bed, clutching a stuffed animal. His eyes were wide. "My mom said you saved us." Maria froze. He smiled faintly. "Thank you." Her throat tightened. She forced a smile and walked closer. "You're safe now. That's all that matters." The boy tilted his head. "Were you scared?" Maria swallowed hard. Memories flickered. The stairwell, the rifles, the cold calm of combat sliding over her like a second skin. "Yes," she said honestly. "But sometimes being scared means you care enough to act anyway." The boy nodded as if he understood. Then he lay back down, hugging his stuffed animal close. Maria stood by his bed until his breathing slowed into sleep. And in that moment, she realized something she hadn't before. Maybe the balance she feared wasn't a curse. Maybe it was a gift, because she could use her past not to destroy, but to protect. Not to fight wars, but to shield the people who built peace. But even with that realization, the conflict inside her didn't vanish. She still woke some nights sweating, heart racing, hearing echoes of boots on stairwells. She still wondered if each lesson she taught was a step closer to becoming the person she had tried to bury. She still feared that if danger came again, she would lose herself completely to the ghost inside her. Yet, when she walked the halls at night, mop in hand, hearing the soft breaths of patients sleeping peacefully, she felt something stronger than fear. She felt purpose. It wasn't the same kind she had once known in the military, where missions ended with explosions or silence. This purpose was quieter, steadier, built in small acts, a floor cleaned, a nurse walking home safer, a child sleeping without fear. And maybe, she thought, that was enough. Maybe that was more than enough. Still, as she leaned against her cart, in the empty corridor at the end of another long night, Maria couldn't shake one truth. Peace had never lasted in her life, and some part of her feared it never would. But she also knew this. Whatever came next, she would face it. Because sometimes the greatest act of strength isn't fighting a battle. It's choosing, again and again, to protect what matters most. And she wasn't ready to stop choosing. Not yet. Why did the sound of a mop bucket rolling down the hall feel heavier now than the echo of gunfire? Maria asked herself that as she pushed the cart along the quiet, fluorescent-lit corridor. Weeks had passed since the night of the attack, yet its shadow lingered. The hospital had returned to its rhythms. Charts, rounds, footsteps, laughter from waiting rooms, the soft beeping of monitors. But nothing was quite the same. Nothing about her was the same. Doctors greeted her warmly now. Nurses lingered in conversation, as though proximity to her steadied them. Families of patients sought her out, pressing her hands with gratitude, some even asking for photos. Children whispered her name like she was a character from a storybook. "She's the one who saved everyone," they'd say. And Maria would smile softly, nod, and slip away, because inside, the words pressed against her like a weight she didn't know how to carry. Saved, hero, warrior. She had heard those words before overseas, when missions ended in silence and destruction. She had rejected them then, and she rejected them now, because those words didn't tell the whole story. They never spoke of the nights she woke trembling, of the faces she couldn't forget, of the guilt that never let go. Now, the soldier inside her stirred daily. She didn't want it to. She wanted to be Maria the cleaner again. But the staff sought her guidance. Security leaned on her advice. Nurses lined up for self-defense classes that grew bigger each week, as she gave them what they asked. Because how could she not? How could she refuse to make them safer, even if each lesson pulled her closer to the identity she'd tried to bury? It wasn't just classes. The hospital administrators asked her to walk through emergency protocols. They asked where to place new cameras, how to secure entrances, what to do if another attack came. Her name began appearing in staff memos next. The titles like consultant and advisor. Maria never asked for any of it. She agreed reluctantly, almost against herself. And every time she felt the soldier's grip tightening. "You can't escape me," the ghost inside her seemed to whisper. "You can mop floors for a lifetime, but you'll never be just a cleaner. Not with blood on your hands." She didn't answer that voice, but she couldn't silence it either. One evening, after a long shift, Maria lingered in the cafeteria. A small group of staff gathered around her, their chairs pulled into a circle. She demonstrated how to stay grounded if someone shoved them, how to break a chokehold, how to use adrenaline instead of freezing when afraid. The staff laughed nervously at first, then grew serious, practicing the moves, asking questions. Maria corrected gently, her voice calm, her movements precise. "Stay low," she told one nurse, guiding her stance. "Your strength isn't in your arms. It's in your balance. If you're steady, you can survive longer." When the session ended, the group thanked her profusely, some hugging her, some with tears in their eyes. "You make us feel safe," one said softly. Maria nodded, but her chest tightened. Because when the room emptied, she was left alone with the silence. Alone with the truth that no matter how much she taught them, she knew real safety was an illusion. And she hated being the one to know that. Later that night, as she walked the pediatric wing, a little girl tugged on her sleeve. Bald from treatment, cheeks pale, eyes bright. "Miss Maria," the girl whispered, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Are you a superhero?" Maria knelt, forcing a smile. "No, sweetheart. I'm just a cleaning lady," the girl giggled. "Cleaning ladies don't have eyes like yours." Maria froze. The words hit her like a bullet. She reached out, gently tucking the blanket around the girl. "Superheroes build things little. 1. They save lives. I just keep the floors clean." But as she walked away, the child's words echoed in her mind. "Eyes like yours." She knew what the girl meant. Eyes that had seen too much. Eyes that carried both the promise of safety and the shadow of violence. And Maria wondered if that was the truth everyone else saw now. 2. The staff began depending on her in ways she hadn't expected. Security called her in the middle of the night to review a suspicious incident. Nurses looked for her when a patient grew aggressive. Even administrators leaned on her calm presence when tensions rose. Maria gave what she could, but each request left her more drained, because every time they turned to her, she felt the soldier inside her pulse stronger, and she feared what would happen if she couldn't contain it. At night, in her small apartment, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. Sleep never came easily anymore. The silence buzzed too loud. Sometimes she heard the stairwell door bursting open again. Sometimes she saw the blonde woman's eyes before they dimmed. Sometimes she felt the weight of the shotgun in her hands, the recoil in her bones. And each time she whispered to herself, "You're not that person anymore. You can't be." But the line never lasted. One stormy evening, as she wheeled her cart past the cardiac unit, Dr. Walsh stopped her. "You look tired," the doctor said. Maria gave a faint smile. "It's a night shift. We're all tired." But Walsh didn't look convinced. "You carry it differently than the rest of us. Heavier." Maria's hands tightened on the cart. "I carry what I must." The doctor hesitated, then said softly, "Maria, you don't always have to carry it alone." Maria's chest ached. She wanted to believe that. She wanted to let someone else see the storm inside her. But the soldier in her knew better. The soldier knew that burden wasn't meant to be shared. So she nodded politely and pushed her cart onward, her heart heavier with every step. The truth was simple, and it terrified her. She was slipping. The soldier was bleeding into the cleaner, and the cleaner into the soldier, until she no longer knew which one she truly was. She feared the hospital staff saw her as a guardian angel, when in reality, she was just a woman trying to survive her own ghosts, and she didn't know how long she could keep up the act. That night, as the halls grew quiet, Maria paused outside a window. The city shimmered in rain-soaked neon. Her reflection stared back at her, mop in hand, uniform simple, but eyes hard as glass. She whispered to herself, so quietly even the walls couldn't hear, "I don't know who I am anymore." And maybe that was the truth she had been running from all along, because invisibility had been safety, and visibility was slowly breaking her apart. Yet even in her doubt, she knew this. The hospital needed her. The staff trusted her. The children looked at her with wide eyes full of hope, and she couldn't walk away from that. Even if it cost her the fragile peace she had spent 5 years building. Because sometimes sacrifice wasn't dying for something. Sometimes it was living with the parts of yourself you wished you could forget, just so others could sleep peacefully through the night. Why did her heart race at the sound of footsteps in the stairwell, even when it was just a nurse hurrying between floors? Maria asked herself that nearly every night now. The attack was months behind them. The hospital had moved on in the way institutions do. New patients, new emergencies, new schedules. But Maria's body hadn't moved on. Every metallic clang, every sudden shout, every burst of static over a radio sent a jolt through her nerves. Her hands shook when no one was looking. Her chest tightened at odd hours. Sometimes she caught herself mapping exits, counting threats, scanning hallways with eyes too sharp for a janitor. She hated it. She hated that she couldn't just be. And yet, she still pushed her mop, still emptied bins, still cleaned rooms with the same quiet precision she always had. Because she needed that routine. It kept her anchored, even as the storm inside grew louder. It happened on a Tuesday night. The lobby was busy with visitors saying goodnight to loved ones. The hum of conversation soft against the echo of rain on the windows. Maria was pushing her cart across the polished floor when it started. A loud crack. A tray of surgical instruments had slipped from a cart in the hallway above, clattering like gunfire as it hit tile. Maria froze. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. In a blink, she had flipped her mop handle into a defensive grip, dropped into a low crouch, eyes wide, scanning for shooters. Her pulse pounded in her ears. People stared. Nurses paused mid-step. A family in the lobby whispered nervously. A security guard raised his brows, recognizing the stance but saying nothing. Maria's breath came fast, too fast. She forced herself upright, gripping them up until her knuckles went white. "It's fine," she whispered to herself. "Just noise." Just noise. But deep down, she knew it wasn't fine, because that instant, that instinctive drop into combat readiness told her what she feared most. The soldier inside her wasn't gone. Not even close. Later, in the break room, Patricia Chun found her sitting alone. "You okay?" Patricia asked gently. Maria forced a smile. "Long night." That's all. But Patricia's eyes lingered. "We all saw it, Maria. The way you moved, like you thought." She trailed off, then said softly, "You don't have to carry this alone." Maria swallowed hard. She wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe she could share the storm inside her without drowning someone else in it. But she had learned long ago that war left marks others couldn't see. Marks no one else could bear for you. So she said only, "I'm fine." And Patricia, kind as she was, didn't press further. But Maria knew the truth. She wasn't fine. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by her apartment window, watching the rain smear the lights of the city. Her hands trembled in her lap, remembering the weight of the shotgun, the recoil, the silence after the shot. She pressed her palms against her knees until the tremor stopped. Memories flooded back uninvited. Desert nights. Helicopter rotors thudding against her chest. The metallic taste of adrenaline in her mouth. The echo of teammates' voices, some alive, some gone. And then the stairwell again. The boots. The rifles. The choice she hadn't wanted to make but had made anyway. She whispered into the glass, voice hoarse, "I don't know how much longer. I can keep doing this." The following week, security held an evacuation drill. Maria had been asked to oversee, her knowledge too valuable to ignore. She stood at the back, arms crossed, watching as staff moved patients, cleared halls, secured entrances. At first, she felt calm, almost steady. But then a young guard, eager but clumsy, mishandled his weapon during the drill. The click of the safety snapped something in her. Before she realized what she was doing, Maria had crossed the floor, grabbed the rifle from his hands, and locked him in a disarm so fast the room froze. Her breathing was heavy. Her eyes were hard. The guard looked stunned, wide-eyed, as though he'd just been ambushed. Silence. Maria released him slowly, stepping back, her heart crashing against her ribs. I'm sorry," she muttered. Old reflex. But the truth was more terrifying than that. It wasn't just reflex. It was instinct, alive and sharp, waiting just below her skin. The staff didn't say anything. Some looked at her with admiration, others with unease. Maria saw both in their eyes, and both made her stomach twist, because she didn't want to be feared, and she didn't want to be worshipped. She just wanted to be human again. That night, Dr. Walsh found her in the cafeteria, staring at an untouched cup of coffee. "You're unraveling," the doctor said gently, sitting across from her. Maria didn't argue. She didn't deny it. She just stared into the dark liquid, her reflection rippling. "I don't know how to be two people at once," she whispered. Walsh leaned forward. "Then stop trying to be two. Be one. Be the person who chooses, every day, to protect others. Whether with a mop or a weapon, that's who you are." "And maybe that's enough." Maria's eyes stung. She looked up, meeting the doctor's gaze. "And if I can't hold it together?" Walsh's voice softened. "Then let the people you've protected protect you for once." The words pierced something deep. Maria looked away, swallowing hard, because she wasn't sure she knew how to let anyone protect her. The days that followed blurred. She kept working, kept teaching, kept advising. But every moment she felt the strain. At night, she sat in silence, listening to the storm inside her, wondering how long she could balance between soldier and cleaner before one side consumed the other. And yet, every morning, she rose, pushed her cart, cleaned her floors, smiled at patients. Because if nothing else, she could still do that. She could still give the people here a sense of safety, even if she couldn't find it for herself. One evening, as she walked the pediatric wing, she paused outside a room. A little boy was drawing on scrap paper, tongue poking out in concentration. When he noticed her, he grinned. "Miss Maria, I drew you." He held up the paper, a stick figure holding a mop in one hand and a shield in the other. Maria stared at it, her chest tightening. "See?" the boy said proudly. "You protect us." Her vision blurred. She reached out, ruffling his hair gently. "Thank you," she whispered. As she walked away, she realized something. Maybe she couldn't escape the soldier. Maybe she couldn't erase the past or silence the instincts. But maybe she didn't need to. Maybe she could carry both soldier and cleaner, warrior and custodian, not as two separate lives, but as one, because the truth was simple. She wasn't either or. She was both, and maybe that was her answer. Still, as she wheeled her cart down the empty hall, Maria whispered softly to herself, "I'm tired." The words hung in the sterile air, heavy, true, but she kept walking, because fatigue didn't erase duty. And sometimes, the bravest thing a soldier can do is keep moving, one quiet step at a time. Why was peace always quieter than she expected? Maria thought about that, often in the months after the night that had changed everything. The hospital had settled back into rhythm. Children laughed in the pediatric wing. Families clutched coffee cups in waiting rooms, whispering comfort. Nurses bustled down corridors with purposeful urgency. Doctors buried themselves in charts and cases. And Maria walked the halls as she always had, mop in hand. Cart squeaking, eyes calm, but nothing was the same. She wasn't invisible anymore. And strangely, she no longer wanted to be at first. The attention was unbearable. Every nod, every whispered thank you, every glance that lingered too long felt like a spotlight. Maria hated it. She feared it. She tried to shrink back into the shadows, but the shadows no longer held her. Slowly, though, something shifted. She realized the looks weren't only of awe or fear. They were of trust. When a nurse caught her eye during a tense moment, Maria nodded, and the nurse seemed steadier. When a patient's family whispered she's here, Maria felt the weight of their relief. When a child asked if she'd walk with them down the hall, she saw the safety in their small smile. It wasn't recognition she carried now. It was responsibility. And responsibility, Maria knew, was something she could live with. Her role in the hospital deepened in quiet ways. She still cleaned rooms, emptied bins, polished floors. She insisted on it, not out of pride, but because the work mattered to her. A clean floor meant fewer infections. An empty bin meant fewer risks. Small things, invisible things, that added up to dignity for patients who deserved it. But she also became something more. She taught weekly self-defense classes to staff. She walked the halls with security officers, adjusting their drills, showing them blind spots only a soldier would notice. She trained orderlies in how to stay calm under pressure. She became, without title or announcement, the hospital's quiet shield, and she accepted it. Not because she craved the role, but because it was needed. Still, she wrestled with herself. Some nights, the soldier inside her still woke her with clenched fists and racing heart. Some days, loud noises still sent her pulse into overdrive. Some moments, she caught her reflection and saw not Maria the cleaner, but Phantasm, the ghost of a woman forged in fire and violence. But instead of burying it now, She breathed through it. She let herself feel it. And she reminded herself, you are more than one thing. That realization didn't erase the past, but it softened it. 6 months after the attack, Maria stood in the cafeteria before a small group of new staff. Most were young, fresh-faced, nervous. They had heard whispers of her story, but didn't quite believe it. Patricia Chun introduced her with a simple line. This is Maria. She's the one who keeps us safe. And she makes the best coffee in the building. The staff laughed, but when Maria spoke, the room quieted. I'm not here to tell you about the worst night of this hospital, she said softly. I'm here to tell you about the nights after. The nights when nurses comfort families. The mornings when doctors save lives. The quiet hours when someone scrubs a floor so a child can walk down it without fear of slipping. That's what matters. That's what lasts. She paused, eyes scanning the room. My past doesn't define me. Neither does yours. What defines us is the choices we make, over and over, even when no one is watching. Especially then. When she finished, the room was silent. Not with awe, but with reflection. And Maria felt a strange peace settle inside her. Later, as she walked the night shift, Dr. Walsh caught up to her. You've changed. Maria, the doctor said. Maria tilted her head. We all change. Walsh shook her head gently. No, I mean, you've accepted yourself. I can see it. Maria smiled faintly. Acceptance isn't peace, but it's a start. They walked in silence for a moment, the squeak of the cartwheels filling the air. Then Walsh asked softly, do you ever miss it? The other life? Maria thought for a long time. Her chest tightened with memories. The desert nights, the adrenaline, the closeness of a team that trusted her with their lives, and the faces of those she'd lost. Finally, she shook her head. I miss people, not the war, not the missions, people. Walsh nodded, her eyes soft. And now? Now, Maria said, glancing at the rooms around her. I have people again. Different, but just as worth protecting. That night, as the hospital quieted, Maria paused outside the pediatric wing. She looked through the window at children sleeping peacefully, 4 drips glowing softly in the dim light. She leaned against her cart, listening to the hum of the machines, the hush of the night, the steadiness of her own breath. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel divided. She didn't feel like she had to choose between soldier and cleaner. She simply felt like Maria did sometimes. Families would stop her in the hallway, thanking her again. She accepted with a nod. Sometimes children waved from their beds. She waved back. Sometimes staff whispered stories of her bravery to new hires. She let them. But when she was alone, mop in hand, bucket rolling beside her, she felt the truth. In her bones, the greatest act of her life wasn't that she had neutralized 3 terrorists in a hospital lobby. It was that she had chosen, every day since, to keep showing up. To keep cleaning. To keep teaching. To keep protecting. To keep building something instead of destroying it. On the anniversary of the attack, Maria finished her shift late. The halls were quiet. The rain tapped against the tall windows, steady and soft. She walked slowly, mop tucked back into the cart, bucket empty, floor shining behind her. She paused in the center of the lobby, the same lobby where it had all begun. For a moment, she saw it as it had been. The rifles, the fear, the faces. Pressed to the floor. She saw herself stepping out of the shadows, weapon raised, voice steady. Then she blinked, and it was gone. Just a lobby again. Just polished floors and empty chairs. She smiled faintly. Because sometimes the ghosts stayed. But sometimes they faded into memory, and she could live with that. Maria pushed her cart toward the exit. The wheels humming quietly. Outside, the city glowed against the night sky. Life went on. And Maria knew, finally, that she had found her. place, not in invisibility, not in glory, but in the quiet dignity of being both soldier and cleaner, protector and builder, warrior and healer. Because sometimes the greatest warriors are the ones who choose to put down their weapons and pick up a mop instead. And sometimes the most important battles are fought not with bullets and bombs, but with quiet dedication and the stubborn hope that tomorrow will be just a little safer, a little kinder, a little better than today. Maria walked out into the night, the rain cool on her skin. She didn't need applause. She didn't need headlines. She didn't even need to be remembered, because dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.